So whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Josh Fromm, and I'm a finance major in the School of Management. I'm here today to tell you why I am the better candidate for treasurer. The Spirits platform and the Forwards Party platform are incomparable. 90% of the Spirits platform has already been fulfilled by previous e-boards, and the other 10% are not feasible. One point the Spirit Party mentions is to create a $25,000 emergency fund. In my experience as being a bookkeeper in the finance department this year, I have never seen one club be denied their event because the revenue has not come in. The current e-board always finds a way for the clubs to have an event, whether it's an EPC meeting or using the revenue from the coordinator line and then replenishing it when the money comes back in from the clubs. Therefore, this line is unnecessary because it will not only increase our current organization's deficit, but it also has to be approved by this year's Senate. They also mention that they want to get rid of community service requirements for the club. Forward believes that community service reflects positively on the organization and the university. We hope to give clubs more of an opportunity to complete these requirements and better define what the community service requirement is. This will make it easier for the clubs while keeping the requirement, which will give our university a good image on a local level. Currently, we waste so much money on things such as staff orientation. We spent over $30,000 this year to send our staff on a 2-night retreat to Holiday Valley. Orientation can easily be done on campus, saving us money that we can reinvest into clubs and events for the student body. Not only this, but we can also restructure our staff so that we don't have to pay positions that are ineffective. Our experience on this ticket is something that cannot be matched. Over the past year, I worked as a bookkeeper in the finance department. This was not only a job, it was an internship that will prepare me to be more knowledgeable as a treasurer. I want to devote the rest of the time so that you guys can ask me questions about my experience and platform.
Lisa, we'll start with you then, Johnson.
Where do you plan on pulling the $25,000 from? Just like the budget that you get normally? Or
He was countering the other.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm saying that's what I also want to clarify on. You know, we're currently in a $171,000 deficit this year, so adding $25,000 for an emergency fund will not only increase that, but it will also, you know, cause us to be more in a deficit.
Josh, you talked about you're very involved on campus, you're very involved in finance and the SA.
Mm-hmm.
What is your knowledge outside of SA?
My knowledge outside of SA?
Yes.
I'm currently in a fraternity, Zeta Beta Tau. It's an on-campus social fraternity, and I work with the treasurer in budgeting. We currently have a $32,000 budget, so I work in budgeting throughout the year, so making sure our money isn't run out in one semester.
I guess I'll follow up with that. Real quick. Do you have any connects outside the community where you've worked to maybe increase your knowledge to help on campus?
Outside the community?
Any businesses?
Yes. My mom actually owns a small business. It's Suzanne Sweets. It's a cookie business, and I do work with her finances. She actually is a business partner with someone who owns Cascon Bakery, which is a larger cheesecake bakery, and he basically has brought me in the past few summers and has given me more experience in how the business is run and where the money comes from.
On the topic of ZBC, how do you respond to people who categorize you with the frat boy image?
With the frat boy image?
Yeah.
People often categorize us as that, and I personally try and get involved. I try to show people that I'm not trying to go out every weekend and do these ridiculous things. And the more you're involved on campus and the more you talk to people, I think they see that that's not the side of me, and that's not what I'm about.
Lizzie, did you have a question?
Well, yeah. Since you were talking about the deficit, do you have any plans in mind to fix that?
Yes, I do. I plan to cut some departments in our office and restructure our staff. This will probably bring the deficit down from about 171 to, I'm going to say, almost zero. We pay our staff. An example of that, club services. They run events such as UB Getting Dirty. So these events only happen a few times a year. We're going to give the vice president, that's the vice president's job. That's really what he should do. So we're going to take away that money and give it back into the clubs. And, you know, it will help out with the deficit.
You did mention that there's a deficit. I guess the common student wouldn't know that because the general ledger is so hard to read. How do you plan on improving the general ledger and informing students of where money is being spent?
The general ledger is very hard to read, and actually on Spirit's platform they say they want to publicize the general ledger. I myself know that the general ledger is currently publicized. If you go to safe.buffalo.edu, you can see every single ledger from each club. And also this year, one thing that the e-board had to do was for each line they had to for each line they had to say, you know, exactly what the lines were for. So I want to publicize that information to the public. You know, tell students, you know, look at this. This information is going to tell you exactly what each line does, so they can give us feedback on that.
What makes you more qualified than your opponent?
What makes you more qualified? I currently, my position in the bookkeeper job has really led me to where I am today. You know, we worked this year together, earlier in the year, and he was fired. Not trying to lowball him, but we used to work together. His work ethic is not comparable to mine. You know, I was required to work 12 hours a week this year, and for the past, I'm going to say 4 or 5 months, I have been working 20 hours a week so I can learn more about the processes and what clubs need to know.
One last question. Tarian.
You keep saying that the emergency fund is going to make the deficit bigger, but your opponent said that he was planning on taking the money that would be put in the emergency line from existing lines that are just too big and don't use all that money. So why do you think that the emergency line will increase the deficit?
Why do I think it'll increase the deficit?
Yeah.
Because, you know, he's going to pull first off, he can't even pull money from the lines because that's the current treasurer's job. So him saying they're going to provide the $25,000 emergency line, there's no way he can make that promise because it has to also get passed through Senate. You know, Johns is one person out of 18 people on a Senate, and they need majority. So how can he promise to the public that this $25,000 emergency line, there's no way in saying that it will pass.
Thanks, Josh.